Be me, Patricia, 38, HR Director. Finally in a position where I can make real change. Been watching these men waltz around the office like they own the place for too long. Time to level the playing field once and for all. Spend weeks crafting new workplace policies. Mandatory sensitivity training for all male employees. Bi-weekly sessions focusing on recognizing unconscious bias and privilege. Also, implementing new guidelines about workplace communication. Men can no longer interrupt women in meetings without written justification. All male-dominated social activities, like fantasy football leagues, are now banned. Create anonymous reporting system for microaggressions. Feeling pretty good about finally addressing the systemic issues here. Call all-hands meeting to announce the changes. Watch the men's faces drop as I explain the new requirements. Especially love seeing Dave from engineering look absolutely livid. He's always been the worst offender with his casual mansplaining. Meeting ends with a lot of grumbling, but whatever. They'll adapt, or they can find somewhere else to work. First sensitivity training session scheduled for Monday. Mandatory attendance. No exceptions. Spend weekend preparing materials about toxic masculinity and workplace equity. Monday arrives and walk into conference room. All 15 male employees sitting there looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Start presentation about how traditional masculine behaviors harm workplace dynamics. Not even 10 minutes in when Dave raises his hand. Patricia, can I ask what prompted this specific training? Here we go. Dave, this is about creating a more inclusive environment for everyone. But why is it only mandatory for men? Shouldn't inclusivity training include all employees? Typical male deflection. Because men are the ones who need to examine their privilege and unconscious biases. See him exchange glances with Adam from sales. Continue presentation about microaggressions and implicit bias. Halfway through when Tom from IT interrupts. Patricia, I have to say this feels pretty targeted and frankly discriminatory. Roll my eyes internally. Tom, you're proving exactly why this training is necessary with that defensive response. I'm not being defensive. I'm pointing out that mandatory training based solely on gender seems problematic. Other men starting to nod and murmur agreement. This is exactly the resistance I expected. Gentlemen, this kind of pushback is precisely the issue we're addressing. Spend next hour going through scenarios about mansplaining and workplace interruptions. Can practically feel their resentment radiating across the room. Good. They need to sit with their discomfort. End session. By assigning homework about examining their privilege, watch them file out without making eye contact. Feeling accomplished about shaking up their comfortable little bubble. Next day, Dave storms into my office, face red with anger, clearly worked up about something. Patricia, we need to talk about yesterday's training. Of course, Dave. What specific aspect would you like to discuss? The whole damn thing. You sat there for an hour telling us we're inherently biased and problematic because we're men. Lean back in chair, prepared for this conversation. I presented research-based information about unconscious bias patterns. You literally said that men interrupt women because we don't value their opinions. That's what the data shows, Dave. The data? Patricia, you made sweeping generalizations about half the workforce based on our gender. He's getting louder now, really losing his composure. You told us our natural communication styles are toxic masculinity. Dave, perhaps if you approach this with more openness instead of defensiveness. I'm not being defensive. I'm being discriminated against. Classic male victim complex. You assigned us homework about examining our privilege like we're children in detention. The homework is designed to foster self-reflection. It's designed to shame us for being men, stand up to assert authority. Dave, this reaction is exactly why this training is necessary. No, Patricia, this training is unnecessary because you're solving a problem that doesn't exist by attacking people based on their gender. He's practically shouting now. You banned our fantasy football league because it's male-dominated exclusionary behavior. Group activities should be inclusive. It was open to everyone. Sarah from accounting was in our league for 3 years. That's beside the point. You created a reporting system where people can anonymously accuse us of microaggressions. It provides a safe space for people to voice concerns. It's a system for people to make unprovable accusations against us. He slams his hand on my desk. Patricia, you've created a hostile work environment for men, and you're calling it progress. Time to shut this down. Dave, if you can't handle examining your own biases, then maybe you should consider whether this company is the right fit. His face goes completely pale. Are you threatening my job because I disagreed with your training? I'm suggesting that employees who resist diversity initiatives might not align with our values. Watch him storm out of my office. Probably going to complain to the other men. Whatever. They'll get used to the new reality. Few days later, Tom from IT requests meeting. Walks in, looking serious, like he's prepared for confrontation. Patricia, I want to discuss the new policies you've implemented. Which specific policies, Tom? All of them, but especially the communication guidelines. Here comes another mansplain session. You've essentially made it against policy for men to disagree with women in meetings. That's not what the policy says. It says men can't interrupt women without written justification. What constitutes an interruption? Didn't expect him to get into the specifics. Well, it's when you cut someone off while they're speaking. But who determines if someone was finished speaking? What if there's a natural pause? These men always trying to find loopholes. Tom, the policy is about respect and ensuring women's voices are heard. But what about when women interrupt men? Is that also against policy? Tom, women have been systematically silenced in workplace environments. That doesn't answer my question. Are women subject to the same interruption policy? Getting frustrated with his literal interpretation. The policy addresses a specific power dynamic, so it only applies to men interrupting women, not the other way around. Tom, you're missing the bigger picture here. No, Patricia. I'm asking for clarification on a policy that affects how I can communicate at work. He's leaning forward now, getting more animated. You've made it so I have to think about my gender before I speak in any meeting. Maybe that level of mindfulness is exactly what's needed. Mindfulness? Patricia, I have to calculate whether my participation in discussions might be perceived as aggressive or mansplaining. If you're worried about mansplaining, then maybe examine why you feel the need to explain things to women. See his jaw clench at that. I explain things to everyone when it's part of my job in IT support. But do you explain things the same way to men as you do to women? Yes, because my job requires me to communicate technical concepts clearly. He's raising his voice now. You've turned basic workplace communication into a minefield where I'm presumed guilty of sexism. Tom, if you approach conversations with respect and awareness. I've always been respectful, but now you're telling me my gender makes me inherently disrespectful. Stand up to end this conversation. Tom, I think you need to do some self-reflection on why this feels threatening to you. It feels threatening because you've created policies that target me based on my gender. Watch him leave, clearly agitated. These men really can't handle having their privilege challenged. Next week, Adam from sales shows up at my door, looking absolutely furious. More angry than I've ever seen him. Patricia, we need to have a serious conversation. Please sit down, Adam. I'll stand, thanks. This won't take long. Oh, great. Another angry male tantrum incoming. I've been here for 8 years. Never had a single complaint about my conduct. Adam, this isn't about individual complaints. Let me finish. In 8 years, I've mentored 6 junior employees, 3 of them women. That's great, Adam, but I said let me finish, Patricia. His tone is ice cold. Those women I mentored, they all got promotions. They all moved up in their careers. Mentorship is important, but it doesn't address systemic issues. What systemic issues, Patricia? Show me the data. Wasn't expecting him to ask for specifics. There are well-documented patterns of workplace bias. Show me our data. Show me evidence of bias at this company. Adam, bias doesn't always show up in obvious ways. So, you're implementing mandatory training and policy changes based on what might be happening? He's getting louder, more confrontational. You banned our fantasy league. You know who else was in that league? Jennifer from marketing, Lisa from finance, Rachel from customer service. The activity had exclusionary elements. What exclusionary elements? We literally recruited people to join. Slam my hand on desk. Adam, you're being deliberately obtuse about the issues. No, Patricia, you're being deliberately vague about your justifications. He starts pacing back and forth. You implemented anonymous reporting for microaggressions. You know what's a microaggression now? Any behavior that subtly communicates bias. According to your training materials, making eye contact with women is potentially aggressive. That's taken out of context. And not making eye contact shows disrespect. You've made it impossible to interact normally. Getting really tired of his hyperbole. Adam, you're exaggerating the guidelines. Am I? Because yesterday I got an anonymous report for holding the door open for Sarah. That stops me short. Someone reported you for opening a door. Apparently it was benevolent sexism that implied she couldn't open it herself. Okay, that seems like an overreach, but the system is working. Adam, perhaps the person who reported it felt infantilized. Or perhaps your system encourages people to find offense where none exists. He's practically shouting now. You've created an environment where normal human courtesy is scrutinized for hidden bias. Maybe examining our unconscious motivations is exactly what we need. My unconscious motivation for holding a door is basic politeness. I hold doors for everyone. He stops pacing, and faces me directly. Patricia, you've made it clear that being male makes me inherently suspect. That's not what I've said, it's what you've implemented. Every policy targets men specifically, because men hold structural advantages. What structural advantages do I have that my female colleagues don't? This is basic feminism 101. Adam, you benefit from centuries of male dominance. I benefit from my work ethic and sales performance. Just like everyone else here. Typical individual success narrative, ignoring systemic factors. You're missing the larger patterns of inequality. I'm asking you to show me inequality at this company, and you keep talking about abstract concepts. He leans on my desk. Patricia, you've decided we're guilty of something we haven't done. I've implemented evidence-based practices. Based on evidence from where? Show me one instance of documented bias here, getting flustered by his demands for specific examples. Adam, just because bias isn't reported doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So you're solving an invisible problem with visible discrimination against men. It's not discrimination to address inequality. It's discrimination to treat people differently, based solely on their gender. He straightens up. Patricia, I've tried to understand your perspective, but this has gone too far. Adam, if you can't adapt to a more equitable workplace. Equitable. You've made it policy that my gender determines how I can behave. Watch him head toward the door. Adam, change is never comfortable. He turns back one more time. Patricia, you've convinced yourself that being unfair to men creates fairness for women. I've implemented research-based policies. You've implemented gender-based discrimination and called it justice. Slam the door behind him. These men are so resistant to examining their privilege. A couple days later, notice some weird behavior around the office. Men huddled in small groups having quiet conversations. Conversations that stop when I walk by. Probably organizing some kind of resistance to the new policies. Whatever, they'll adjust eventually. Friday afternoon, get called into CEO's office. Robert looks stressed, which is unusual for him. Patricia, we need to discuss what's been happening with the new policies. Of course, I'm happy to brief you on the progress. Actually, I've received some concerning feedback. Here we go. The men have been complaining. Robert, resistance to change is normal, especially when addressing entrenched privilege. Patricia, it's more than resistance. I've had multiple employees express serious concerns. Which employees specifically? Already know it's going to be the usual suspects. Dave, Tom, Adam, and several others. Called it. Robert, those men are exactly why we need these policies. They're claiming the policies are discriminatory. Of course they would say that. They're losing their unfair advantages. Patricia, I need you to walk me through the justification for these specific policies. Spend 20 minutes explaining the research on workplace bias. He listens but looks increasingly uncomfortable. Patricia, while I support diversity initiatives, some employees feel targeted. Robert, you can't make an omelette without breaking some eggs. But these policies seem to apply exclusively to male employees. Because male employees are the ones who need to examine their behavior. See him frown at that. Patricia, doesn't equal treatment mean the same standards for everyone? Typical male CEO missing the point about equity. Robert, equal treatment in an unequal system perpetuates inequality. I'm not sure I follow. Women have been disadvantaged for centuries, so now we need to level the playing field. By disadvantaging men? Getting frustrated that he doesn't understand basic concepts. By removing male advantages and creating equity. Patricia, several employees have mentioned consulting with employment lawyers. That gets my attention. About what specifically? Gender-based discrimination policies. These men are such babies. Running to lawyers. Robert, implementing diversity policies isn't discrimination. When they only apply to one gender, it might be. Robert, are you taking their side? I'm trying to understand all perspectives. Typical both sides nonsense from men. Robert, whose side are you on here? Patricia, I'm on the company's side, and I'm concerned about potential legal issues. Spend rest of meeting defending the policies. He agrees to let them continue for now, but wants regular updates. Monday morning, walk into office, feeling vindicated. Then notice something weird. Dave's desk is empty. Walk over to Tom's workspace. Also empty. Check Adam's office. Completely cleared out. Panic starting to set in. Rush to Robert's office. Robert, where is everyone? Patricia, we need to talk. Where are Dave and Tom and Adam? They submitted their resignations this morning. Feel my stomach drop. All three of them? Actually, it's more than that. He hands me a stack of papers. Resignation letters from 12 male employees. All dated today. All effective immediately. Robert, what is this? It's exactly what it looks like. Scan through the letters quickly. Each one cites discriminatory workplace policies as reason for leaving. They can't all just quit. They can, and they have. Feel anger rising. Robert, this is clearly coordinated retaliation against diversity efforts. Patricia, they exercised their right to leave. It's organized resistance to equality. He looks exhausted. Patricia, it's the consequence of policies they found discriminatory. Spend next hour arguing about their motivations. Robert keeps focusing on practical implications. Patricia, we've lost most of our technical staff. Robert, we can hire more people. Dave was our senior engineer. Tom managed our entire IT infrastructure. So we'll promote from within or hire externally. Adam was our top salesperson. We've lost 60% of our sales team. Starting to realize the scope of this. How many people total? 15 employees. All male. All resigned effective immediately. Feel my world starting to crumble. Robert, we have to do something. Like what? Make them come back. This is clearly an illegal conspiracy. Patricia, people have the right to quit their jobs. Spend rest of day trying to figure out damage control. Realize how interconnected everything was. Tom handled all our servers and security systems. Nobody else knows the passwords or procedures. Dave was the only one who understood our custom software. Adam had relationships with all our major clients. By Wednesday, the reality is sinking in. Servers going down, with no one to fix them. Clients calling asking where their sales rep is. Projects stalled because key technical knowledge walked out the door. Robert calls emergency meeting. Patricia, we need to discuss immediate steps. Robert, I think if we reach out to them individually, they've made it clear they won't return under current policies. Of course they're holding the company hostage. So they're demanding we reverse the diversity initiatives? They're demanding equal treatment. Feel my anger building. Robert, we can't let them dictate terms. Patricia, we can't function without critical staff. Then we hire replacements. It will take months to find qualified people, and we need institutional knowledge. Spend next several days watching everything fall apart. Major client cancels contract because no one can provide technical support. Payroll system crashes with no IT person to fix it. Sales pipeline completely stalled. Other employees starting to panic about job security. Friday afternoon, Robert calls me in again. He looks like he's aged 5 years in 1 week. Patricia, I've been in contact with several of the former employees, and they're willing to return if we revise the policies. Feel my blood pressure rising. Robert, that's extortion. It's negotiation. They're holding the company hostage to maintain their privilege. Patricia, they're offering to return to work. Under what conditions? Equal policies that apply to all employees, regardless of gender. Typical male demand for reverse discrimination. Robert, that completely undermines everything we were trying to achieve. Patricia, we're trying to achieve a functioning company. Can't believe he's capitulating to their demands. Robert, if we give in to this, we're sending the message that men can just walk away when they don't like equality. We're sending the message that we need our employees. Spend weekend furious about the entire situation. These men orchestrated this whole thing to maintain their advantages. Monday morning, Robert tells me the decision has been made. Policies are being revised to apply equally to all employees. Sensitivity training will be optional for everyone. Anonymous reporting system will be restructured with due process requirements. Feel completely betrayed by the company's surrender. Robert, this is exactly why women can't advance in corporate environments. Patricia, this is about creating sustainable policies. This is about men refusing to give up power. Watch over the following week as the men gradually return. Each one has negotiated individual terms for their return. Some got raises. Others got better titles. Dave is now Senior Principal Engineer. Tom is Director of IT Operations. Adam is VP of Sales. They literally got promotions for their organized rebellion. Company is back to functioning normally within 2 weeks. But I'm seething about how this played out. Spend my time documenting everything for potential legal action. This was clearly coordinated gender-based retaliation, probably planned from the moment I announced the new policies. Men stick together when their privilege is threatened. Can't let them get away with this kind of organized resistance. Start researching employment lawyers who specialize in discrimination cases. Not discrimination against women, but discrimination against policies that help women. Has to be some legal recourse for this kind of corporate intimidation. Meanwhile, have to sit in meetings with these men pretending everything is normal. Watching Dave smirk during team updates. Seeing Tom act like he's some kind of hero for saving the company. Adam telling jokes about his new VP title. They think they won. They think they proved that companies can't function without male employees. They think they demonstrated that challenging male privilege is too risky. But this just proves how entrenched the system really is. proves that men will band together to maintain their advantages, proves that companies will sacrifice equality for convenience, proves that progress threatens men so much they'll sabotage entire organizations. Every day, watching them celebrate their victory makes me more determined. This isn't over. This is just evidence of how deep the problem runs. These men revealed their true nature when equality was on the table. They showed they'll destroy a company rather than examine their privilege. They proved they view equal treatment as oppression. They demonstrated that male fragility runs so deep they can't handle basic accountability. Sitting in my office planning next steps. Maybe corporate HR isn't the right venue for real change. Maybe this system is too corrupt to reform from within. Maybe it's time to take this fight to a higher level. These men think they won, but they just showed me exactly how threatened they are by real equality. They revealed their weakness, their complete inability to function in a world where they're not centered, their desperate need to maintain advantages they pretend don't exist. This experience has been educational. Learned that men will literally quit their jobs rather than examine their behavior. Learned that companies will abandon diversity rather than risk male displeasure. Learned that progress threatens the patriarchy so much they'll burn everything down. But mostly learned that the fight for equality is going to require much stronger tactics. These men want a war. They just declared it by their coordinated attack on basic fairness. Fine. They have no idea what they've unleashed. This was just the beginning.